Welcome back. Wait, that's my line. Yes. So today, before we jump in next week into what you're going to hear about, what we're going to be going in a second, before the sabbatical, the council and I sat down and kind of talked about what we wanted to do with the sabbatical or what the goal of it was. And one of the things they had originally included on there was, we want you to come back with a fresh vision. And I said, hey, why don't we focus on just allowing me to have life balance and, focus on, things. But interesting thing happened during my sabbatical. The Lord started speaking to me and giving me a fresh vision. And so, instead of coming back to talk with the council so that we can just begin the conversations about what we're going to be doing, I'm going to be talking about it right now. And so we're going to be splitting our time between catching you up a little bit on what I've been doing. This, I haven't just been sitting on the couch watching TV. And then what I feel like the Lord is saying in regards to where he wants us to go as a church. And so one of the things that I've been doing is every Sunday morning, the boys and I went to a different church. And after we went to the church, I take them out to lunch and I pick their brains. So what'd you like, what'd you not like, and be honest, and I'm taking notes, and then I have my own thoughts and I'm processing with them. And so we got to experience a lot of different things. And for the first time, first time in a long time, I was able to actually just attend church with my family. And that was really awesome. I really enjoyed that. And so you might have noticed I wasn't sitting here, I was sitting there because that's where Jude felt comfortable, and I was hanging out with Jude. And that's what I'm going to do, regardless of the fact that I'm the pastor and you may feel like I'm supposed to sit down here. So I've been really enjoying hanging out with my family, my boys, and during this time. But also, it was the first time in a long time that I've just attended church, walking in for the first time as somebody who doesn't know anybody. And that does something to you. And so I was able to see things. And the one thing I will say in reference to that is that the thing that stood out is different. The most different good church versus bad church experience wasn't having to do with the sermon, the worship, how pretty the building was, or the programs the church offered, or any of that stuff. The most impacting thing that made a difference was whether they were a friendly and welcoming church. And that didn't really have anything to do with size. Sometimes you think, smaller church is more likely, they know who attends and who doesn't, so they know if you're new. Has nothing to do with that, because there were bigger churches that I went to that were a lot more friendly than some of the smaller churches that I went to. And then there were smaller churches that were a lot more friendly than some of the bigger churches. But that was probably the most drastic difference. And I tell you that because it has something to do with what I'm going to say later. Second thing is that I was sorting out my life. So in a lot of ways, so the divorce is finalized, okay? So there's that. But then I've just been wanting for years and years, we've just been accumulating stuff. Anyone else feel like that? You just keep on accumulating stuff. And so I've taken 11 trailer loads of stuff to the dump. So that's why you were able to fit even in the upstairs area of my house last week if you came, okay? So, and there's still a lot of stuff that's there that needs to go, move. But I'm looking forward to having just a functional house, where where your stuff is, you're able to use it. And then reconnecting with friends, other pastors. Then the major thing that changed that I made is that I withdrew from the PhD program at DTS, Dallas Theological Seminary. And the reason I made that decision is because the Lord made it pretty obvious to me that that's what I was supposed to do. And he made it obvious because, before the sabbatical, the council and I were talking, and the church needs you to step up. And then my kids, obviously, with what's going on, they need me to step up. And then I went to school during my sabbatical, and my professors were basically saying, we've all been talking, and we need you to be doing better. And I was like, I already felt like I was drowning, and all of you just said, we need more of you. So I was like, okay, that made it obvious, something needs to go. And it was very obvious. I was already kind of almost there. And then when they said that, I was like, all right, I'm out. Bye. And I have to say, I'm loving it because it's after men's breakfast yesterday, I was able to stay around and talk to people who wanted to talk to me and not feel like I need to go out and do the next thing. And that's how I felt like pretty much all of my life. And it was good to finally have a little bit of margin in there. And so I'm looking forward to that, just being a little bit more open, more available. So third thing, I've been meeting with John Iverson pretty much every week, every other week. We've been having coffee. We've been talking about a book called The Emotionally Healthy Leader. Just to give you a glimpse, a couple of things that it said, it is impossible for a person to be spiritually mature without being emotionally healthy. And some of you, I see you shaking your heads yes or no. I would say yes. Yes. Because we're spirit, soul, and body. And when you have a disconnect in one, it does affect the others. And so it was interesting it was kind of an affirmation of the different growth that I've been having over the last year. Because it gives you little quizzes, and I'm like, before I would have scored a 1 or a 2 on all these things, and now I'm scoring 4s and 5s. That's pretty awesome. But then John was also reading a book where a quote from that, we have become masters of disciplining disciples instead of making disciples. And that has everything to do with those two things have everything to do with what I'm going to talk about in a second. So fourth, God started giving me a new vision. So you're asking, what is that new vision? And so before I get into that, I'm going to show you a clip. Now, we all have different traditions around the holidays. And for my family, watching movies that are associated with the holidays. And so one of the movies that we watched was The Addams Family. And so there is I'm going to show you a clip, and this is the opposite of the vision that I'm going to share with you. Okay, so here we go.
Everybody come together, sing our song. Life is really perfect, we are one big family. Everything is so much better when I'm like you and you're like me. What's so great about being yourself when you can be like everyone else?
Wow, that is absolutely hard.
It's easy to be happy when you have no choice. Yes, it's easy to be happy when you have no choice.
So that's the opposite of what I'm going to share with you. But how many of you feel, maybe not to that extent, but maybe that's how you feel sometimes when you come to church? You pull up in the church parking lot and you go, deep breath. Okay, all of the stuff that happened this morning didn't happen. I gotta pretend like it didn't happen. And I smile. And then I get out of the car and then I come up and how's your day going? It's going great. It's going great. And so maybe not to that extent, but some churches are like that. We call them cults. But sometimes our churches can be a little like that. And so, disclaimer, okay? Some of the things that are going to come out of my mouth, you're going to be shocked are coming out of my mouth. Because some of you have known me for 8 years, and some of the things that you're going to hear me calling us to do as a church and us as individuals to do as a church, you're like, but you haven't been doing that as our pastor. And yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And the things that I've been changing, the Lord's been doing in me over the last year, have a lot to do with where I'm at, and the process of what I just went through has a lot to do with what I'm going to be saying. And so I'm in a place where I'm going to be stretching right along with you in what we're going to talk about. And the other thing I'm going to say is this is not a program that the church is starting. Okay, a lot of times when you hear a vision, it's like, oh yeah, the Lord's calling us to start, an Awana program, we're going to reach kids, and we're going to do, this is not a program. This is about our identity as a church, as believers, and stretching in a way that just extending ourselves, opening ourselves up to what God might be doing in our life and with the people around us in our life. So, big picture is that church should be the one place where we should be able to be ourselves. Okay? What's so great about being yourself when you can be like everyone else? No, church should be the one place. Yes, family should be that. Yes, friends should be that. Yes, there should be other support systems in our life, but sometimes people don't have those other support systems. And regardless of whether they do or don't, church should be the one place where people should be able to feel like they're able to be themselves. But oftentimes what happens is church is actually the one place where we feel like we can't be ourselves. We can't admit that we're struggling. We can't admit that things are bad. We seem to have an openness to sharing, like when something medically happens in our life, and we say, oh, I need prayer, I'm getting this procedure or this kind of thing done. But when it comes to other aspects of our life, there's almost like there's this standard that's set, this bar that's set. We all feel like we're supposed to be perfect, right? And if anything is less than, then we feel like we can't really say, I'm struggling with this. You know what the key word in that is? I'm struggling. Struggling. That means the person knows, okay, this is what it's supposed to be, or maybe that's what, God's, he's stretching me, he's calling me to this thing, but I'm struggling with it. And they're looking for a support, but the reason why we don't sometimes say that is because the other people that we might be saying it to, they've bought into the whole, we all have to be shiny, happy people too. And so then if you admit weakness, then they're going to look down on you, and we fear that. And so we struggle with being vulnerable with each other. So, second part of the big picture is we're going to go about making disciples the way that Jesus did it, and that's by doing life with one another. It's the way that Paul did it too. And it's the way that just keeps on coming in the Bible. And so on Sunday mornings, we're going to be talking about starting the Gospels when Jesus calls the disciples, and we're going to watch how Jesus did community with his disciples. And then we're going to go into the early church and see how the early church did community. So we're going to be learning together about what it means to be a church family. And then the third big picture is that I've heard some people say, we're concerned, there's no kids. There's no kids in the church. And we might start to see the change happen in progressions. Because, if you look around, when you don't see kids and maybe you see a huge gap between kids and that, then maybe instead of like thinking in terms of like, oh, I need to try and reach out to kids directly, you reach out to parents that you might have a little bit more likely chance, and then the parents come with kids. And so we might see these changes happen in progression and phases, and we might see them happen in homes before we see them happen in church. And so the first thing that we're going to do is share our lives with one another. And so in one of the email updates I wrote to the council, I said, for the first century believers, church wasn't an activity on Sunday mornings with a group of near strangers that sporadically attended as passive observers. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. For the first century believers, church, first of all, when we say the word church, we say, I'm going to church. And we're talking about building, right? And we maybe as a younger person, you heard this, here's the church with the steeple. You look inside, and here's the people. All right, I'm going to teach you the theologically accurate way to do this. Okay, so here's the church, who are the people inside the building with the pretty steeple. Okay? So church is not an activity, it is the people of God. And it is the word is the assembly of the people of God. It's when the people of God get together as church. Okay? And so it wasn't an activity on Sunday mornings. Okay? Sunday mornings were important because that was the first day of the week. That's the day that Jesus rose from the dead. But what you read about is actually in the book of Acts, they got together daily. Day by day, the Lord was adding daily to those who were being saved. And okay, before you freak out, I'm not saying we're going to have church every day. Okay. But it was an activity on Sunday mornings with a group of near strangers. And sometimes when we have that view of church, I'm going to go to church, and church is about, we're going to sing some songs, we're going to hear a sermon, and that's what church is. And it has really absolutely nothing to do with the other people that are in the room. It's almost like we go to a movie theater, and when you go to a movie, you're not really concerned about the other people. In fact, you're hoping nobody else is there, right? It says they make noises, you want to make noises, and or you want to stretch your legs out, or whatever it is. So sometimes we can approach church with that same kind of mentality, and then we are essentially just strangers from everybody else in the room, and the other people are really irrelevant to the experience, so to speak, that we call church or think of as church. And so that's not the way the first century. The first century, it was like, these are the like-minded people that we huddle together and meet in secret because people are trying to kill us. Okay? And so it was a community that really depended on each other and was there for each other. And they didn't attend as passive observers. That organically, what the Holy Spirit wants to do is he wants to take those who are born again and they're infants, and he wants to raise them into toddlers, and then into those who are beginning to be mature, and then into those who are actually the teachers and leaders of God's people. And so you see a natural progression of, I don't know anything about this, to I'm teaching other people about this. And I'm going as a follower, and then I become a leader. I'm being discipled to I am now discipling somebody. And so, and then second is, I'm not asking you to do anything that you aren't already doing. I'm asking you to stretch and challenge yourself to include others in what you're doing. Okay? So, an example of what this looks like, might look like in my life. How many of you know I like baseball? Okay, if you don't know that, I need to get to know you better. Okay, so I like baseball. So just with baseball, passion for baseball, I can invite people to watch baseball with me. I can invite them to play baseball with me. If you happen to like the video games, we can play video game baseball together. We can discuss a book about baseball. We can do a fantasy baseball league, which Dwayne has been bugging me about for years, and I've never done it, so that might be your thing, Dwayne. Okay, okay. And then we can attend a game together. All of those things are just with baseball and me, something I'm already interested in and already doing. I just extend an invite and I say, hey, who else might want to do that with me? And see, the point isn't baseball. The point is building relationship. And you build relationship, and in the midst of relationship, then there's discipleship that happens. And then you might even reach out to somebody who then feels more comfortable to come to church with you, or those kind of things. So another thing about me is I have kids. And so sometimes, as a parent, I might want to be in the room with people who are more experienced parents going, help! Okay? And we don't really create those kind of opportunities. I've heard a lot of you who are older in the church, or maybe even have kids that are growing up, or that you've expressed even a desire to pass on some of the experience and knowledge that you have. But then sometimes, you feel like, oh, well, the younger people, they don't want to be around me. Well, guess what the in-between might be? It might be if you throw out an invitation, hey, who wants to come and learn about marriage, from me or whatever, they might not come to that. But if you say, hey, let's get together and watch the football game, then they might. And then it creates a relationship where it doesn't have to be formally about that, but then in the context of relationship, then you got to start talking about life. And then they say, if they start trusting you, then they go, hey, we're really struggling with this. Do you have any advice? Do you have any thoughts? Okay? So sometimes I want to be with people more experienced than me. Sometimes I want to be with people my own age, with kids my own age, so that we can all kind of oh, wait, your kid's going through that too? Oh, I thought it was only my kid, And so that you have that fellowship, okay? And I experienced this when I lived in Chicago. I started seminary, my master's degree in Chicago, and I heard about this 2-3-year-old church plant that everybody was talking about. And so I went to there, and I knew some people who were going there, but none of them were there the first time I went. And so I'm looking in the bulletin, and I see that there's a group of guys that get together and watch Monday Night Football. And I didn't really care anything about football, but what I wanted was friends. I wanted to connect. And so I was I went, and then I started making friendships. A little bit later in that church, I'm looking, and they started listing their home groups, their home Bible studies. And there was one that was meeting near where I lived. It was a lot closer to the church and the commute I had to make to go to church. And so then I connected with some more people. And then a little later, they said, oh, we have this ministry center downtown. We're going to have a ministry fair. And all of the different ministries of the church had information about how you can get plugged in. And they were wanting to start a youth group. And I got involved with that team. And then I got involved with ministry in that church. And then before I left, it was they were talking to me about being a small group leader and all these kind of things. But so I've experienced this, and this is the impact when people come to our church. If they all of a sudden they see oh, these people get together for these various things, and I'm not ready to go to a Bible study, but oh, there's this group over here that's doing this, right? And then they get involved and plugged in. And so the second thing is engage the community. Okay? And really the only difference between this and the last one is you extend the invitation a little bit further. So rather than you just put it in the church bulletin to other people in the church, we put it out on the community pages, and then you're inviting other people that maybe don't go to church and maybe don't have a relationship with Jesus Christ. You're inviting them to be a part of this. And this reminds me in the Gospels, and we'll get there, Jesus calls Matthew's a tax collector. And so right after Jesus calls Matthew, he starts following him. He's like, hey, Jesus, I have a lot of tax collector friends. Can we throw a party and invite all my tax collector friends? You and your disciples come too. It'll be fun, right? And so they get together, and then they're able to interact with Jesus and his apostles, And we're not Jesus and his apostles, but we are disciples of Jesus. And, when disciples of Jesus and non-disciples of Jesus get together, then we just wait and watch what the Holy Spirit does as you build a relationship with one another. And so, in order to help with this, as we create these different events, we're going to start making access to invites, okay? Putting together like little invites that you can carry on you. And so I don't know if you're like me, but I'm like 99% more likely to invite somebody that I'm talking to if I have something I can physically hand to them. And if you're anything like me, then having those on you will automatically put you in a mindset that I'm looking for somebody that I can invite to this thing. And so, I'm in conversation with this person. Hey, do you happen to like baseball? Where I'm having some people over to my house. And then another idea I have is I'm going to make up one shirt, okay? And you may like it, you may hate it. You may not want to, wear it or whatever. You may not want to get it. But it's just going to say, are you coming? ? Having it different colors, different sizes. And so just picture it, you're a bunch of people walking around town with shirts that say, are you coming? What does that naturally spark in the other person's mind? Coming to what? And they might ask you, and then you pull out one of those invites, coming to this. Just things to make it a little bit easier for those who maybe are like me and a little bit more introverted. Okay? Maybe a little bit more shy. A little bit less likely to engage in conversation with a stranger. And so then as a church, we'll intentionally create some events that might be just fun events that, you can invite people to. So again, in my life, how this might look, baseball, I extend the invite a little bit further. I help maybe the Little League in town, and maybe I help them fundraise for the goals that they have or whatever. I've previously served as a coach. You don't necessarily have to have a kid on the team to be a coach. And in fact, right now, if you told me you were willing to be a coach, I could message Heidi and she would recruit you immediately because they're always looking for coaches. You could volunteer to umpire, or, a group of us could just decide to go to one of the games just because and just cheer on the team and make them feel good and encourage them. And it'd be like, who are these people, dude? Whose kids are there? We don't have kids. We just like baseball. We just these kids are great. So, next thing is intentional discipleship. And what I mean by intentional discipleship is identifying some of the core areas that are foundational things that we should know how to do as believers. So things like how to study your Bible for yourself, how to engage with people in evangelism, and things of that nature. So we're going to start with that first one, how to study your Bible, and we're going to have two different tracks. Okay, one of the things that started to become apparent to me is sometimes our Bible studies are set at a level that are like, if you're at the ground floor, they're kind of uninviting and intimidating. And, like people felt like, okay, I'm not really getting a lot out of this because everything's kind of over my head a little bit. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with having the more advanced Bible study for the ones who are a little bit more advanced. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two different ones that I'll do. We're going to have it in my house. Okay. And Wednesday night is going to be more of the beginner, and it's going to be going through this book, How to Study Your Bible. When I was a teenager, my youth pastor handed me this, and it changed my life. The reason I know what I know about the Bible is because of this. It's the inductive study method, and it teaches you how to study the Bible for yourself. And so if you're at the place where you're like, you know what, I hear you're supposed to read the Bible, I want to read the Bible, I try to read the Bible, and it might as well be written in tongues, because I don't understand what I'm reading. This will teach you how you can take the steps to know what you're reading, understand what you're reading. Okay, so if that's you, I encourage you to come. And then the second one is whether you want to use the guide or not. I've heard some of you say, we don't like books. Okay, so if you want to use the guide, here's the guide we'll be using. And it's the same thing, the inductive study method. It just gets you guided through a book of the Bible. We're going to be doing the book of Acts because we're doing this whole theme of, learning what the church is and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to be going through the book of Acts. That's going to be on Thursday nights. Okay? And I have all the books here so that if you're in the bulletin, it lists the ISBN number and make it easier for you to find it. The other way we're going to do things differently. And then Saturday morning, Brent's breakfast, they agreed to go through this with me. How to read the Bible for all it's worth. It's probably second, in terms of foundational after the How to Study Your Bible. Okay, so the other way that this is going to be different is we're going to start approaching Bible studies the way that pretty much any other subject that you want to learn is approached. Okay, you take a class in something, you don't just show up at the class without any kind of engagement with what you're going to talk about. Okay, and that's the way we do Bible studies. Everyone shows up, they're like, what are we going to be discussing? I have no idea what we're going to be discussing. All right, turn to Ephesians 3, and everybody's looking at Ephesians 3 for the first time, in several years. And then, we read it what did you get out of that? What does that mean to you? You know what? I really don't care what it means to you. I care what it means, and then how are we going to apply it to our life? So what we're going to do is we're going to actually look at what we're going to be discussing, and then we're going to come with questions and thoughts, and we're going to be sitting around a table or couches in my case, and discussing this topic, and we're going to be engaging and learning together and growing together and instructing one another, as the New Testament says. And, I'll be guiding that discussion and being, the pastor figure in the room, I guess. But that's what we're going to do together. And, one thing I just want to say about this is that another thing I was noticing when we had our Bible studies before, and even just the ones that are going now, we have the, fellowship time and, prayer time beforehand. And that's still going to continue. But here's what I noticed, is that half the people in the room are not there for the Bible study. They're there for that first part. And so part of what we're doing is we're giving you all sorts of different opportunities to do the fellowship stuff and to be engaged with each other because you're hungry for it, you're starving for it. But what that does is when we have a Bible study, yeah, we catch up with one another, but because we're already caught up with one another in a sense, like, then we can just dive in, and we can, everybody who comes, they're coming because they want to come to a Bible study. And so you have better Bible studies. And when you have fellowship times, you have better fellowship. And when you have a worship event, you have better worship. And when you have, and people are coming because they want to come. But something that I want to say in this is, please don't look at all of these things and feel like you have to come to everything. I know that sometimes I've learned in previous generations that's what, like, if you're a member of the church, like anything the church does, you feel like I have to go and be part of that thing. And please don't see this, because you will burn out if you you come to everything. Because my goal is that as different people say, hey, I'm willing to do this and this and this and open my home, that we're just going to become known as the church that has a whole bunch of stuff going on, and people are going like, what in the world is going on at that church? And that we engage in life with each other. So in your bulletins, there's an insert, and in that insert, it just has a bunch of questions that, normal questions that we always, ask. But the birthday and anniversaries on there, because you notice we started putting that in the bulletin. And I noticed as I was putting together my spreadsheet, as I was calling everybody who's come to this church over the last 8 years, over the last couple of days, I noticed that there's a lot of you that I don't know your birthday or anniversary. So that's there. Like, if you don't feel like maybe we have it, or so you don't have to get hounded by us later. And then also, are you currently or interested in being a church member? I put it that way because our records are kind of squirrely in terms of, there's some of you who are members that our records don't accurately reflect that you're members, and so we just want to get that all straightened out. And so the last one, those last two, I am willing to open my home for blank. Okay? And that's completely up to you. Whatever, if you like, hey, I've been wanting to read this book and discuss it with other people. Hey, I like to watch this show, this movie, whatever. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And the day and time I have in mind for this is this. Now, some of you might be ready to fill this out. You're already, maybe some of you already have it filled out. Like some of you are out there. And if that's great, you have it in mind. Today, fill it out, put it in the offering box, hand it to me, whatever you want to do with it. Some of you are contemplators. And you're going to go home, and all week you're going to stare at this, and you're going to agonize over it, of whether you want to fill it out or don't want to fill it out, or what you want to invite, and you're going to go through 1.5 billion different ideas, and you're going to scratch it out. After you put it in, you're going to change your mind, and then by next Sunday, then you'll come and you go like, hey, I have it, and then there's no rush here. One thing I've learned about this is when you're starting something new, is that there are people who are going to be what they call early adopters. Okay? Early adopters are the ones, like I said, you already have it filled out. You're excited, I love this is awesome, I want to be a part. And you're ready to just jump in the deep end, let's go. And you're ready right now. That's awesome. If that's where you're in the place, you're going to give us our kickstart and our launch into doing this new thing, okay? Some of you are you're waiting to see how it goes, right? You're maybe you're going to wait till somebody, a couple things, you're going to try out some things, you're going to peek in, go, how's it going? And, oh wait, that went well for them? That seems to be going well. It's not a huge, disastrous blow up, and, fiery wreck. Okay, I'll give it a try. Right? And then some of you are what they call late adopters. And you will wait until peer pressure crushes you. Until everybody's doing it, and you feel like you're either going to stand out and be the rebel, no, I'm not doing it, or you're going to say, okay. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with any of those. It's just part of who we are, part of our personality. And like I said, we're supposed to be ourselves. Okay? And please don't hear when I joke about the peer pressure part, like we're going to make you like everyone else. Okay? Like, this is just what I feel like God is telling me, how we can better have a better engagement with each other, how we can have better engagement with the community, and we can start to see God moving in people's lives. And Lord willing, we'll see people accept Jesus, get baptized, get plugged in, form relationships, step up into leadership, and all those kind of things as we go. There are 3 things. I know how long I've been talking. Okay, so there can be, in order for this to work, there can be 1, no expectations. So if you put yourself out there and you open up your home and nobody comes, you have to agree you can't take it personally and get upset. Sometimes that happens. It might be the day, it might be that we got 18 inches of snow, it might be that particular thing, there just happens to be nobody else who likes that thing, and that's okay. And so, no expectations. Second, no judgment. And so, this is the tricky one, okay? Because this is part of where it's going to stretch, okay? Some of you might be, your conscience might allow for different things than other people's conscience. And so you might think of an idea, a movie, activity, or whatever that you put out there, and you see it in the bulletin, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that they do, You know what? You can feel that way. Keep it to yourself. Just don't go. Just don't go. If that's not something that your conscience allows, don't go. Or better yet, maybe you go, you form a relationship with this person, and maybe God might be using you to help them take some steps in becoming a little bit more mature. Okay? Another thing is, sometimes some of us, I'll just put it this way, we live maybe a little bit better lifestyle than other people. And we might have a standard of, cleanliness, or the size of the home of the person who should be inviting, or maybe how hospitable they should be when you go to their house, or try and set those aside. Because anybody who puts themselves out there is being courageous. They're taking a step of faith. They're stretching themselves. They're inviting you. They're including you. They're trying to be outgoing. And so be gracious back, please. And then third, this is absolute, no exclusions. Okay, if you put it out there, you're inviting, it can't be like, I'm inviting to everybody except for Fred. Okay, now, with the last 2 things that I said, okay, know that there are extreme situations in which it's our job as a church to be on the lookout for your safety and all those kind of things. Okay, so I'm thinking about rare exceptions, like somebody's on the Megan's Law website and, you have kids. And, like, we're going to be on the lookout already for somebody who, would be of danger, and we're going to be making sure that they're contained the way that the law even says that they be contained, okay? If you're aware of something like that, let us know. But outside of that, it can't just be, well, I don't like that person, so I don't want them to come. Okay? No exclusions. Okay, so if we're all on the same page with that, then I'm looking forward to seeing what the Lord does with this. And I'm excited for this week and, the different things that you see going on. I'd love to have you guys, come and be a part of those as we get started. And